So you would say that since you moved down here, you've definitely heard more about this stuff. Interesting.
Welcome to Kentucky.
The birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and built on the largest cave system in the known world. The home of Daniel Boone, Hunter S. Thompson, horse racing, and bourbon.
That when the hour grows late, the Bluegrass State becomes the breeding ground for realms beyond those familiar to the human race. In the east, ghosts, spirits, and ethereal entities roam the hills and hollers.
In the north, Mothman beats his wings along the banks of the Ohio River.
To the west, small green creatures stalk farmhouses and disappear without a trace when shot.
While in the south, the energy of the veiled witch is palpable just over the border. Joining with us as we investigate just what goes wrong in the Bluegrass night.
And ask the question, how many coincidences are too many? There's no need to check the clock.
There's no need to check the clock. Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky.
Nightowls of all times, places, spaces, and ages, the full moon has risen once again, and you are listening to Midnight in Kentucky. For MIK, I'm Ben, and we have an excellent, if a little bit unusual show for you this evening. And you guys know when I say unusual, it definitely can get unusual. This is our very first live show directly from the Russell County Public Library, and we can't thank them enough for having us out for RCPL Con 2022. It was an excellent time with excellent people. Met so many of you guys, so many patrons, and heard so many otherworldly encounters and unusual experiences from UFOs and poltergeists to the Mothman and stuff that we don't even have names for. And I'm hoping to share those with you guys in the future, some of those with you guys in the future. Because there were some excellent stories. But tonight, what you guys are about to hear is a little experiment that I came up with for our very first live show. The idea for the show was Beasts of the Bluegrass. And at the beginning and throughout, you can hear me tell a few different stories of Beasts in the Bluegrass. Some classics, some I'm sure that I've told on the show before, and some new ones, some ones that have just happened over the course of the summer. And I can't thank you guys that come out and participated and told your stories or asked questions or just vibed in the room with us, just chilled with us and listened to the show. You guys were amazing, and I can't wait for you to co-host another episode with me. I want to send a huge debt of thanks to Mr. Cody Gabehart from AboveTheSun Records. The dude is my brother. We have made music for decades now. We have done sound stuff. We've lived life. He has been a huge part of my life. We've investigated weird stuff, talked about all this manner of stuff many a time. He is hopefully going to debut as co-host on an episode of the future. But for now, I want to deeply thank him for bringing out all the equipment, for setting us up, for recording us. Cody Gabehart of AboveTheSun Records. You guys check him out. He's amazing. Also, want to thank lead Night Owl and valued member of the MIK team, Miss Jennifer Samples Gabehart. She helped so much at RCPL Con, from speaking with witnesses to, her knowledge of the unknown and the paranormal, and just chilling with us there at the booth. Thank you so much, Jennifer. You know how much all of that means to us. And speaking of chilling at the booth, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't mention one of our co-hosts, another obviously valued member of the MIK team, Miss Jamie Lee Foster. You guys know her. You've heard her on the air. She does so much for this show and for me in particular. She was up loading banners and loading the alien in the jars and loading up Mothman and making sure we had stickers. MIK would absolutely not exist without her. So, Jimmy, we thank you. We love you. We will be appearing and are very excited about appearing at the upcoming Goblin Market and Dandyland Jam at Dandyland Studios in Somerset, Kentucky, which I'm sure more than a few of you guys know from the incredible Penny Royal podcast. This event was organized by another incredible friend of ours, Beyond Sight Studios. They do so much. I'm hoping to have them on the show at some point in the future to talk about their work. But this event is going to be full of local artists, craftsmen, the paranormal Museum is going to be there, tarot readers, and then there's otherworldly music at night. So it's going to be an amazing event, September 10th. Everybody come out and chill. Bring your encounters with the paranormal along and ready to tell. And who knows, you may end up on this year's Halloween episode. And how cool would that be? So, September 10th, Dandyland Studios, Somerset, Kentucky. Goblin Market starts at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. From there, we will be at the Somerset Zombie Walk in October. Not exactly sure on the date on that. I will get back to you guys on that, but we will be there. And of course, bring your stories of high strangeness and the paranormal. You may end up on the Halloween episode sometime in October. Zombie Walk. From there, we'll be back at the Russell County Public Library, and we can't thank them enough for inviting us back for their BAM conference, Books, Art, Music. And we'll be doing a lot of stuff there. Of course, the Midnight in Kentucky podcast will be happening as always, and we want to hear your stories of high strangeness and otherworldly encounters, but there will also be some manuscripts from myself of my short stories, maybe playing some music, not exactly sure on that yet, but we're going to be doing a lot there. Ransom Letter Publishing, of course, our production company, as it were. So be sure to come out for that November 5th at the Russell County Public Library. And then come November, we have one of our favorite conventions of the year. Of course, we're talking about Crypticon on November 19th and 20th. Crypticon.com for all the information and tickets on that. And of course, we'll be there. We'll be listening to stories of high strangeness. We'll be walking around. We'll be at the table. We'll hopefully have some merch for you guys. But come see us at Crypticon. Come see us at all of these events. Bring your stories of the paranormal and supernatural and just get weird with us. But for now, let's get into it. Beasts of the Bluegrass, live from RCPL Con at the Russell County Public Library after this. Nightowls of all times, places, spaces, and ages, the full moon has risen once again, and you are listening to Midnight in Kentucky. First and foremost on the show, I want to thank the wonderful Russell County Public Library, and in particular, Christina Daffrin, for asking us out today. Let's give them a big hand one time. My name's Ben, and the co-hosts for this episode are surrounding me right now. Please feel free to speak into the mic at any time you guys have comments or questions. We're all along for the ride together. Yeah. Let the folks at home know you're real.
Hello. Hi.
So,
But I'm not real.
what is real? This is the theme of the show this evening. Who of us are real? What is real? So, as we begin our travels down these Kentucky backroads this evening, I ask, just for a second, if you would close your eyes with me and immerse yourself in this numinous tale of this otherworldly journey on which we are about to embark. A friend and yourself are returning to Lexington from visiting a family member at the Lake Cumberland Regional Hospital in Somerset when somehow you miss your turn. Attempting a U-turn, you notice a dead animal lying on the side of the road. Nothing strange yet, but you notice a particular floating feeling, and things are starting to seem odder and odder out here in the rural Kentucky night. Suddenly, a massive ball of white fur appears on the road that is too close to miss. You can't make out a head or arms or legs, only what appears to be a ball of fur floating in the middle of the road. And when your vehicle collides with it, your car inexplicably seems to go up and over the thing. The smell emanating from the fur ball is so nauseating that it fills the gas station parking lot where you stop soon afterward to check the damage to your vehicle, which proves to be substantial. The undercarriage of your car is significantly devastated, and patches of white hair are found in the tailpipe and fender. It's not until you're back on the road again. It's not until you're back on the road and nearing Lexington that you realize there are up to 90 minutes for which you cannot account. What happened in that span of time?
What was the white fur ball in the middle of Highway 461? Is it possible that you may have had an experience with something not of this plane out here on these Kentucky roadways? Failing to come to any logical conclusion on what you've just been through, the only place left to turn is to the mysterious. This incident, which occurred in 2004, was reported to noted paranormal investigator Barton Noonley and was included in his book Mysterious Kentucky Volume 1, which for any of you that have listened to the show before, I reference constantly. It's a great book. Check it out if you get the chance. Additionally, in retrospect, the witness of this peculiar instance reported feeling an odd sense of calm throughout the entire thing, even laughing hysterically during the collision, concluding something strange had happened to them only after they realized they couldn't recall an hour and a half's worth of time. Now, as outlandish as this may sound on first listen, this incident features a few trademarks and experiences of the otherworldly. Missing time is most commonly associated with the phenomena of alien abduction, but has been reported across the spectrum of encounters like this one, and seemingly implies that these experiences of this nature can affect our perception of reality as we know it. As we were talking about just a few minutes ago, what is real? Having a sense of pervading calm and a feeling of what's happening is normal, despite later realizing the supreme strangeness of the situation is another recurring aspect to close encounters with the unknown, paranormal, and supernatural. Though many researchers have lumped this particular report in with Sasquatch or Bigfoot sightings, of which there are many throughout Kentucky, I chose to start with this story to illustrate just how often paranormal happenings blur the lines between different types of phenomena. In this one case, I would argue that we can see aspects of what is commonly associated with Sasquatch sightings, ghost experiences, and alien abductions, which I believe points to something far stranger about the paranormal and the supernatural than many investigators are willing to admit. Pulaski and Casey County seem to have a special relationship with the beast, or beasts, known as Sasquatch, however, with dozens, if not hundreds, of encounters with the creature being reported in their area over the years. Such is the case of one fox hunter who had a run-in with the creature in the woods of the Windsor area, just on the other side of the Russell County line in Casey County. The witness, since passed, was a well-respected member of the community, a member in good standing at his local church, an avid outdoorsman who nevertheless was so impressed by his encounter that he passed the tale on to his own children, who in turn passed it on to their children, who undoubtedly will pass it on to their own. Another account from the hills of Casey County tells of a 5-year-old boy who was so spooked by his sighting of what he dubbed the Hairy Man in the woods around Wilson Ridge in 1957 that he would break into panic attacks every time he attempted to venture outside afterward. The event so impacted the boy's life that he would continue to refuse discussing the creature or his sighting of it into adulthood. 4 years earlier, 2 children ran upon a similar hairy man in Casey County wilderness, who they claim was crouched down and using 2 sticks to dig into the mud. In the late 60s, a slew of reports of the varmint of Goose Creek would begin pouring out of Casey County. Local hunters claimed that catching the scent of the varmint would shake even the most steadfast hunting dog, sending them running in the opposite direction. And in 1965, a retired state trooper would report hearing a nighttime yowler in the area. Additionally, the late 60s would see reports from Liberty of what can only be described as a thing peering in the windows of local teenage girls. Appalachia as a whole is a hotbed for Bigfoot activity, with one of the most noted men to pioneer Kentucky, Daniel Boone, having his own encounter with one of these beasts while exploring the Smoky Mountains near Middlesboro. Known to the Cherokee people as the Yeho, and I totally butchered that name, Boone wrote in his journals that he shot and killed the 10-foot creature and that it had taken 3 rounds from his musket to finally bring it down. Our forests and wooded areas have served as residence to a myriad of varying entities of myth, legend, and lore since long before the first Europeans set foot in the bluegrass, however. Petroglyphs of large 4-toed footprints and portraits of beastmen carved into cave walls and cliff faces around the state document the experience of indigenous Kentuckians with a hair-covered bipedal creature or race of creatures throughout time. In the late 1800s, both the Louisville Courier-Journal and the Adair County News ran stories documenting the discovery of a collection of 10-foot skeletal remains in and around Columbia. 3 of these large, inexplicable skeletons were said to have been found laid to rest within a hidden cave lined with ancient hieroglyphics, while another was excavated from a native burial mound located in the backfields of a local farm. However, these are far, far, far from the only instances we have of encounters with beasts of these such. In fact, on April 8th of this year, just a few miles from where we sit now, a sighting was reported coming across the Cumberland Parkway to renowned Bigfoot researcher Charlie Raymond of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, where there's currently, or they may have stopped this now, but where there was road work right there coming off the Columbia exit into Russell Springs. One of these creatures walked in front of somebody. He said it turned, looked at him. The classic, if you guys are familiar with the Patterson-Gimlin film of the Bigfoot supposedly seen in California, walks through, turns his head, looks at the driver, and walks on. Only minutes from here. So now that brings us to another of Kentucky's most prominent monsters. If the Sasquatch is the most well-known, I think that these creatures are probably one of the most prolific in Kentucky. Some people call them upright canids. Some people call them dogmen. But I think most of us would know these creatures as werewolves. Kentucky has a serious problem with werewolves. And I know how funny that can sound at first. However, start digging into the legends and the history of these creatures, you can see time and again that animals are killed, supposedly killed by these things. Animals are ran off by these things. And it's even gotten to the point where supposedly a few people, and in one instance an entire family, was killed by an upright canid. And there are constant sightings of these things. I actually received one when I woke up this morning to get ready for this event. A guy that works at one of the local docks had messaged me and said that around 1 o'clock in the morning, he was doing his rounds, and from the bushes there came a growl. The standard werewolf coming out of the moonlight growl. He said it definitely wasn't a coyote, definitely wasn't a wolf, but something was stalking the grasslands around the dock. Some of the oddest sightings of humanoid creatures in Kentucky and Appalachia are those many consider only to be aspects of legend and lore. That is, until, like we just talked about, it is seen stalking their own backyard in the middle of the night, or keeping stride with their vehicle through the long, dark corridors of one of Appalachia's many forested highways. Witnesses describe a tall, dark-furred creature that walks on 2 legs, possesses canine-like features, and glares at onlookers with glowing red eyes. It would seem as though there is many names for these upright canids as there are areas through which their howls echo in the Bluegrass State. In the 1600s, when French settlers came to Louisville, they brought with them tales of the rougarou, a bipedal dog-like creature with a tendency of violence toward those who witnessed it, only to find that a population of the creatures awaited them here, in their new home. Cherokee tribes in the area had their own stories of the Limerick, a word borrowed from northern tribes to describe an almost identical beast. Ultimately, however, the uncanny resemblance to what is most often known to historical folklore and modern pop culture as a werewolf cannot be denied. I was walking out on the dock last night about 1 o'clock, and I heard this really deep, loud growl from the woods. It felt like something was watching me, because I heard it and I could hear something big crashing around the trees. It was so dark that I couldn't see anything, but the growl was really deep and sounded like something out of a horror movie. That's a direct quote taken from the witness I spoke with this morning. Werewolves, upright canids, dogmen, whatever you want to call them, there, like I've already mentioned, there are as many names for these things in Kentucky as places that they've been seen throughout the state. Are any of you familiar with the beast of the land between the lakes? Has anybody heard of that before? Nope. So the beast of the land between the lakes, sightings of what have become known simply as the beast of LBL, have come from several different groups of outdoor explorers, including hunters, fishermen, hikers, bikers, Boy Scouts, and campers. The wooded areas of the land between the lakes are said to be littered with strange footprints, large nests covered in unknown fur that appear to be slept in, and the carcasses of deer and other animals torn apart in a way that is unnatural for predators. One of the most dramatic and violent supposed encounters with the beast of LBL comes from the early 1980s and was reported to researcher Jan Thompson. When police were called to a campsite in the backwoods of LBL, known for the abandoned military bunkers dotting the landscape, they were met by a gruesome and grisly scene. The bodies of 3 or 4 campers, a young couple and their children, were found badly mutilated and dismembered in a similar manner to livestock on Ditto Road. It is said that one of the bodies was found in the limbs of the tree some 50 yards from the supposed attack, and that strange howling was heard by investigators in the woods surrounding the brutality. Though this story has been met with large amounts of scrutiny online, as you can imagine, Jan maintains that it is a true record of events, and some researchers of the Dogman phenomenon believe that they have located the area in which the savagery occurred in years since the incident. In this case and the several others documented here, it has been suggested that the events have been downplayed or outright covered up by authorities involving these investigations. This is not to mention the high strangeness surrounding werewolf events, such as the ethereal silences and UFOs occasionally being reported in conjunction with sightings. So, of course, sitting here in Russell Springs, the land between the lakes, is about 4 hours away. It can be really easy to kind of block ourselves off in a way, to think that, maybe they don't reach us here. Maybe they don't come this far into the central region of the state. But as we already said, there are as many werewolves running around as their places are in Kentucky. And one of these is named the Gateway Werewolf. The Gateway Werewolf, named due to supposed stomping grounds throughout the gateway to the Appalachians, is another of the alleged creatures with whom locals report experiences dating back as long as people have settled the area. In 1972, a squirrel hunter allegedly viciously attacked by a werewolf in Bourbon County along Hickston Creek in the early morning hours. Reported that the beast came at him from behind, pushed him down, and left several lacerations across his back and legs that required treatment from a local hospital. This incident spurred a local farmer to come forward with his own encounter with the werewolf, which he says had crossed the road in front of him years before. Both men describe similar attributes of the beast, including having the body of a bear with silver or grayish fur, the muslin face of a wolf, and humanoid hands with sharp, dagger-like claws. These two descriptions would provide the creature with its most infamous of nicknames, the Barilla. However, these are far from the first of their kind. Native American legends in the area tell of a great white-furred monster who emerges from mysterious hovering lights over the Appalachians to kidnap victims and return them into the glowing skycraft. And of course, Bourbon County. How far away is Bourbon County? We talked about this morning. It's about 2 hours. But you can start at Bourbon County. You can start with these mutilations, track your way back down into Somerset, where, much like werewolves of London, people have reported these things walking right down the street on Main Street in Somerset. And to bring it on home even more, one of the most profound encounters with one of these creatures locally has occurred less than 10 miles from where we sit today in the woods behind the old Houchins building on Lakeway Drive. You may have seen this case on our recent appearance of the CW's Mysteries Decoded. However, much of the high strangeness and harder to explain aspects of this case were left out by the show altogether. In the early 90s, as a teenager, local James Bunch and a friend set out across the woodline and field that lies just beyond the shopping center that housed the Houchins grocery store on their way to Main Street. Stopping to pee, James and the other witness parted briefly, their backs to one another, and James had just finished peeing when he heard, like we talked about before, that low werewolf growl. Turning, James comes face to face with a humanoid dog-faced creature that stared him down at a height of 8 to 10 feet with glowing green eyes. That James claims radiated a pure evil. The creature growled a low growl, haunched down onto all fours, seemed to shrink in size, and shot forward with an unnatural speed before seemingly vanishing before reaching the woodline. Returning, James's friend had watched the entire unnatural occurrence unfold, and the encounter continues to haunt both men to this day. So, A lot of times when researchers talk about events with Sasquatch, with Dogmen, we like to relegate these things into these little boxes. Maybe we're only seeing creatures that live in the woods that we haven't been able to explain. Maybe we're seeing animals with some type of sickness that have to stand on their hind legs for whatever reason. I think a lot of investigators and people I've worked with tend to leave out details like these. The no sound, the fact that these creatures seemingly shrink and disappear and vanish, the UFOs in a lot of these cases. These things, in my perspective, are much stranger than just something walking around the woods that we might not know about. What that is, maybe one of us will find out one day, but I can't offer you any answers here. So before we go on, questions, comments from anybody, please feel free. I'm going to take a drink of Coke.
Can I have some Coke too?
You absolutely can. I would give you this one or one that I brought along, but unfortunately I didn't bring any more. I was looking for coffee and ended up with Coke, so that's my usual drink of choice when I'm recording the show is coffee. Going on, we're going to take a look at rakes. Oh, go ahead. Did you have a question?
Okay,
go
it's
ahead.
not really a question. It's just something that I've actually experienced myself.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
This was a few nights ago. I don't know if I was hallucinating or something, but my cat saw it too. Am I weird? Weird. I was trying to say mirror, but it wasn't even a mirror. It was a window. I'm totally stable. Okay. There was
Take your time.
Some big white face trying to be human, but definitely not human thing watching me through the window. And that entire night I had to spend in another room because my room didn't have curtains at the time. And so all I could hear and see was that thing just standing in my window.
Interesting. So
It was, yeah, it definitely had a white face. Its eyes were like big holes that didn't have eyes. I'm bad at words.
no, the reason I'm shaking my head is because you have introduced us to today's episode's first synchronicity.
Whoa.
Because the next thing I was about to talk about was rakes, slender men, and pale crawlers.
I'm scared already.
I'm going to make a comment here from earlier,
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
specifically talking about the furball. I'm going to say a lot too, Jesus. So personally, I've experienced a lot of paranormal activity just since I've been down here because I have not lived in this specific area for a while. And it just seems odd to me because I don't think it was a creature, but I also don't have like a way to believe that it was a phantom. And just from personal research, it sounds like a phantom because phantoms find ways to mess with the people who they wish to and the living.
Absolutely.
But that just, it's odd to me because it doesn't seem like something that, I don't know.
Well, I was actually having a conversation with Jamie the other day. Sometimes I wonder, and this is where we're going to get really weird, so everybody hang on. Sometimes I wonder if with these type of events, with the furball, for instance, or phantoms or pale crawlers, or really any of these things, if they're not presenting themselves to us, or whatever this isn't presenting itself to us in a way that we can not necessarily easily understand, but is more easily digestible to us than what it may actually be. Does that make sense?
It's a fourth dimensional something.
Exactly.
Something that we can comprehend.
Yes, absolutely.
Instead of what it actually is.
Instead of what it actually is. I actually just read an interview with a guy, and this guy had a lot of alien abduction activity, which the more you dig into alien abductions, the weirder all of that gets. It's not necessarily just spaceships, and it's poltergeist activity, it's dogmen, it's Sasquatches in some accounts. But he had pulled up to this red light, and he was in the middle of having creatures come into his home at night and all of this. So he pulls up to this red light, stops the car, he looks over, and this pterodactyl walks out of the bushes and turns its head to him, looks at him, squawks a little bit, and then flies off. It's and again, you all know what show we're doing here, so I'm going to stop saying that things might get weird. I'm not sure if the guy actually saw a pterodactyl. I believe that he believes he saw a pterodactyl, 100%. But wouldn't it be awfully convenient of some type of creature that was presenting itself to him, that wanted to communicate with him, whatever, presenting itself in a way with a pterodactyl, that this guy would be like, oh, that's a dinosaur. That's weird. Definitely shouldn't be here. But, okay, it's not like, to take it's not a inconceivable eldritch horror that we would break down upon witnessing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can comprehend it, exactly. You can comprehend a pterodactyl. You may not be able to comprehend an extra-dimensional fungus of some kind,
I mean, the dinosaur, it may be dead, but at least it existed at some point.
Exactly.
We know what they look like, or vaguely what they look like.
Exactly.
Feathers, comprehend pterodactyl.
You can They did have feathers. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it even goes a step further. There was a guy in Monroe County, if I'm not mistaken, that literally saw a velociraptor, and not like the velociraptor that paleontology has showed us actually exists. Straight up Jurassic Park velociraptor. Again, walks out the bushes on these two guys, kind of snaps its jaws and walks back in and is gone. I don't think that, could have saw a velociraptor. Don't get me wrong. Those things could absolutely exist. But, we have a lot of phenomena, particularly with Skinwalker Ranch. Anybody ever heard of Skinwalker Ranch? Yeah. There we go. I love Skinwalker Ranch. Talk about Skinwalker Ranch all the time. Skinwalker Ranch, for those of you who don't know, is a ranch in Utah that has extreme amounts of activity. And it's UFOs, poltergeists, ghosts, everything. A lot of people from Skinwalker Ranch say that they've seen the Predator walking around. Like the Predator from Alien vs. Predator. Straight up a Predator. So are these people seeing the Predator, or are they seeing something that knows that they're going to associate when somebody sees something, that they're going to say, oh, that's a Predator. I couldn't have possibly seen that. Just like somebody sees a velociraptor or a dinosaur. I couldn't have possibly seen that. But a lot of people are seeing it. Go ahead.
Should I get closer to the mic?
I can hear you, but if you want to get closer, go right ahead. And it's picking everybody up on here, so we're good.
Okay, I'll just sit back down. But I've barely had any paranormal experiences, but in the same vein of seeing fictional characters, and I know you brought up the Slender Men and the Rake, so I think this sort of fits into both categories.
Absolutely.
I remember I had this really weird experience when I was very little. Well, not little. I think I was 7 or 8. And so I was in my living room at the time, my family's living room, and it was the middle of the night. And I was, we had a little mini trampoline that was near the window, and I was jumping on that little mini trampoline. And I look at the window, and for a split second, I swear to God, I see Smile Dog. A little straight up, just the red version. The red version with the giant smile. For a solid split second, I immediately freak out, losing my mind. Because I'm 8 and I don't know what to do with what I just saw. So
Absolutely.
I just, run back to my room. I can't really remember what I did after that. But I know one of my friends was there, and I don't know if she saw it too. But I definitely saw something, and I might have just been 8 and having brain problems. But also, that's the closest thing I have to a supernatural experience, in my memory.
Absolutely. And that exactly what you said. You definitely saw something. I hear that repeated often because there are so many of these things that, exactly what you said. How could I have saw a small dog? How could I have saw a Slender Man? How could I have saw a Velociraptor? But you did see something, and that's the thing, and that's what makes it so interesting. If you can, I would love for you to talk to your friend and see if she did see anything, if you get the chance. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Grab a card and
She lives in Connecticut right now, so
understand that.
I have to text her about it.
Yeah, I would love to hear though, and that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about next. Rakes, Slendermen, and Pale Crawlers. I actually had a kid come yesterday to record a episode of Transmissions from the Abyss, which is kind of our show where we talk to witnesses. Usually it's more akin to what we're doing here, and we're just discussing cases. And Transmissions from the Abyss is a spinoff show of Midnight Kentucky where we directly sit down and talk to witnesses. This kid, he is only, I think he's 13, 14 now. When he was about 8 years old, he's sitting on his bed. And he actually wakes up, that feeling of being watched. Common thing, being watched. So he wakes up, he's being watched. He looks out his window. He's in a 2-story house. He looks out his window, and he says that there's marshland. This was in northern Ohio. He says there's a lot of marshland out his window. It's rural area, lots of trees, marshland, forest. He looks out his window, and down below his house, he says about 100 yards, there's this creature. It's a slender, tall, white creature, no face, large black eyes, just like you mentioned, and it's hunched over the ground. It's hunched onto the ground, all 4 legs, and it's moving, but it's not moving right. It's not moving like an animal would move. It's moving like a badly rendered video game, like it's not necessarily fitting into the reality around it. And that is a common thing with creatures like this. So have any of you saw the video that was released very recently from Moorhead with the pale creature in the parking lot? Yeah? Yeah. So it's weird, right?
Its knees looked weird.
Yeah.
It had ankles way up here.
Yeah. Almost like it shouldn't be here. Like it wasn't made for this place, right?
Yeah, it looked like if you mixed a person and an animal's legs.
Yeah. You know what they remind me of? Well, we are at a comic convention. You know what these pale crawlers really remind me of? Other than Slender Man, they remind me of the Demigorgons from Stranger Things. They are it's almost like they have a hard time being here, but it's a mixture of an animal and a human. That was perfect. That was great. So on July 7th of this year, a video was posted to social media from a user in Moorhead, Kentucky, showing a tall, pale creature caught on security cam skulking around a parking lot. The uploader says the video was shot at one of the cottages up the gorge. It's still unclear if this is pertaining to Red River Gorge, an area about an hour from Moorhead, which is a hotbed, again, for all manner of paranormal activity. In the video, the creature can be seen making jerky, glitchy-like movements. The same as this kid explained to me yesterday. He had never saw this video before. I showed it to him after he told me a story, and he said that's exactly how this thing moved. So it makes you wonder if these things aren't supposed to be here, if they have come from somewhere else. And if they have come from somewhere else, where have they come from? Talking about the Slender Man, though, and about fictional entities in general, it's always interested me how we've always had encounters with these type things, the pale crawlers, the rakes, but it wasn't until about 2009 when Slender Man blew up on the internet that we started having Slender Man encounters. People started reporting this thing here in reality. And, without going too deeply into that whole frame of thought, I believe the witnesses. I believe when the witnesses say that they've seen these things. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, this is related, but also kind of random. But with these things, something would be posted online about it, and then suddenly there's encounters and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's an entire thing with an anime I've watched called Inspector, N/SPECTRE or something like that. Mm-hmm. I thought it was completely spelled wrong, probably, but I got close enough, where somebody will make something up, and then enough people see it, enough people start talking about it, that it literally gets manifested into the real world. And that just seems like it's actually plausible.
So what do they call those in Inspector? Is there a name for them?
No, it's just a little thing that happens in there with this one thing that turned out to actually be completely made up, but it was still made like a ghost or something.
Interesting.
Into the world that they were in.
So, in the worlds that I kind of delve into, and in the magic, and in these types of things, those types of creatures, that actually has a lot of precedence in real practice. Those are often called tulpas, and they are thought forms. They're things that are given exactly what you said. You described it perfectly. Yeah, it's an idea that as it's given more energy, it manifests itself into reality.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I'm gonna add on to the whole Slenderman thing. I was born in 2009, so around the time it was blowing up. Of course, I wouldn't have known that was even a thing, and I heard about Slenderman around the time that I was 7. So I'd say probably 2015.
Okay, yeah.
And it was still pretty popular at that time. And it adds on to what you said earlier about how these entities can change how they are to fit into our reality and get into our mind.
Yeah.
And I know there's been murder cases and stuff that's been linked to Slenderman, but I think that with that theory there, that it's just because somebody made it up and it was in people's minds, these entities have found a way to physically make this appearance and turn themselves into Slenderman.
Yes.
Even though Slenderman was something that was simply Photoshopped.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. That was perfect. That was perfect. That was it. Go ahead.
This is sort of a callback to what they said and the discussion we had earlier with creatures turning themselves into other more comprehensible things for humans. The idea I had to go along with that is it could be that, or it could be our brains can't comprehend what they really look like, so our brains make something up or fill in that memory to protect us from harm or something along the lines of that.
I like that. And I'll take that a step further and give you guys an idea that I think about a lot. What if these aren't physical creatures? What if these are creatures that literally exist from our brainwaves, and we give them the ability to exist in reality? Something weird to think about for a moment. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is a phenomenon that's happened quite a lot throughout human history, though, hasn't it? Like the chupacabra started being sighted after a film came out.
Absolutely.
Sighted in Puerto Rico, I believe, after a film came out where the monster happened to be an alien that looked like what they described the chupacabra as looking like.
Absolutely. That was a good pull. I'll even take it a step further on that one and talk about Betty and Barney Hill, who are some of the most famous abductees of all time. Their aliens were on The Outer Limits the week before. The very aliens that Betty and Barney Hill describe were on an episode of The Outer Limits. I'll be real with you guys. I did not expect it to get into this weird territory, but I'm proud of everybody in this room for taking it there. And I absolutely believe Betty and Barney Hill. I believe that they had an experience. It's something so traumatic that I don't think they could have faked it. But why do their aliens look like the aliens from The Outer Limits? Is it because that's the way that they had to look to introduce themselves to them? That was a good pull. Very good. Very good. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so one of my father's friends, his name's Ricardo. He used to be what do you call him? Where they would illegally take Mexicans and come over to America.
Okay, yeah.
Well, he said when he was going back over to Mexico, when he crossed the border, he seen there was this, like a bat, and it turned into a human. And I was following them as they were being chased by the Border Patrol. And then he said a few years later, as he was coming back, he seen a creature that looked like a wolf dog, but looked like a bat, had a bat face or something.
Interesting.
He thought it was like a chupacabra.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't really believe it. See.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Grundy County is up in the mountains. My hometown where I was born, it's surrounded by mountains. So if you live on the countryside of McMinnville, you'll see some paranormal activity.
yes, on those mountains, right? From those mountains. Mountains and, we talk about a lot about liminal spaces in the paranormal. And mountains are very much a liminal space. Mountains are an area where you can't really live, right? Like nobody can live on a mountain. And that's where these creatures seem to come from for whatever reason, from the mountains, from the woods, on the hillside. You said something really interesting, though, about people being chased by the Border Patrol and them seeing this cryptid with it. There's something about trauma. There's something about, and I can't imagine a more traumatic event than being chased by somebody. There's something about trauma also, along with these liminal spaces that these creatures exist in. And of course, you can say that that's, adrenaline. You can say that that's fear. But there are absolutely more instances of people in war reporting UFOs, reporting cryptids, reporting these things, or people, in times of hardship reporting these things. So kind of like what we were talking about before on, could these creatures be something within us that, not to say that they're not real, but that we give them their power. We're providing them the ability inward. What's a more energetic time? What's a more time that you feel like something could happen than when you're terrified? So that was very good, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was awesome. Oh, Renee, last question.
Okay, so you keep mentioning different things like Slenderman and Regs and stuff. What is the third thing you keep mentioning? Like
pale crawlers. Pale crawlers. And I didn't get into this. That's okay. I have loved this discussion so much. Thank you guys so much. Eastern Kentucky, if you guys want to go home and do some research, has a long history of pale crawlers. And these are very much the same thing. They're slender, tall, long fingers that, act weird and do weird stuff. But there's a lot of encounters from Eastern Kentucky of pale crawlers that are wild stuff. Guys, thank you so much for this. This has been awesome. I can't tell you how much it means to hear your guys' stories. We will have this episode up on the Midnight Kentucky feed, hopefully sometime next week. So if you've told a story, check into that. You guys will be on the show. Thank you all so much for co-hosting with me. It means the world. Give it up for our producer, Mr. Cody Gabehart, one time. Give it up for the mother, Nightowl, Mrs. Jennifer Gabehart. Jennifer was our very first Patreon. If you guys are interested in learning more, check out the Patreon, but you ain't got to pay for nothing. Check us out on midnightinkentucky.com for all of our mainstream episodes. Thank you guys so much. Till the next moon rises, Night Owls. From Midnight Kentucky, I'm Ben. Thank you. Good night. Thank you all so much. You all were so good.
You've been listening to Midnight in Kentucky,
a Ransom Letter Publishing podcast.
Join us on Twitter and Facebook.
Or get in contact with your questions, comments, or stories of high strangeness
at midnightinkentuckypodcast@gmail.com.
How to stop this.